brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Sips, Suds, and Smokes. I am one of your hosts today, good old boy Mike, and joining me for this discussion is Reverend Mark.
Hello, wish you were here.
Good old gal Juliana. Oh, I'm sorry, not.
We always have Juliana, but not today.
Oh man, that was so bad. Oh God. Anyway, Kevin the Brewer and good old gal
Regina.
Thank you for getting it right this time. So glad to have everybody here for this discussion. I almost want to back up and start over. I usually don't insult my guests in the first 5 seconds of every episode, but we do miss Juliana being here for this discussion. I'm very glad to have you here with us as well. So we've all had the Great American Beer Festival we've been to for the last 3 days, and I just thought we'd get to sit down and kind of chat about, all of our thoughts, about the festival itself and some beers that we had and things we liked and things we didn't like, and we've just been having a good discussion, kind of walking out of the festival itself, and some really great beers. I guess the first is just a free-form question I throw out to everybody, which is, so, what do you think of the festival itself? Was it big? Was it small? Was it everything you thought it was going to be? Reverend Mark, what do you think?
Was it big?
Yeah, well, yeah. Was it big? Enough beer here for you?
Oh, my. Yeah, and I was here 2 years ago, and it just is even more. I think it was a little better organized this year. And maybe that's just the way in which those of us who had brewers and media access. It was just really, a great experience. But no, it's you're out there swimming in the tide sometime, not knowing whether you're going to catch a riptide and it'll just take you way on out somewhere where somebody needs to save you.
Good old gal Regina, what do you think?
I would say it's definitely overwhelming.
Did you think the number of beers or just the physical size of the hall itself?
No, the convention center is a regular convention center, but it's packed. I mean, there's so many beers there. There's over 3,000 beers there?
Yeah. Yeah, true.
And you have a 1 ounce glass, and you would like to try them all, but that's impossible.
Kevin the Brewer, what do you think?
Well, I'd never been to the GABF before. I'd been to the AHA Nationals before, so I kind of thought I knew something about what to expect, but I didn't. And it was overwhelming, and fortunately, I'd done a little prep work. I give them GABF kudos for their new app. I don't know if it's new or not. I think it is. So I had done a little work on my phone to get some organization about where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and I think without that, I would have been totally lost and might have ended up in that tide that Reverend Mark talked about and might have never come back.
I agree that the mobile app it really totally made the difference for the experience. I'm used to going to wine tastings as well as other festivals, and I'm kind of at the behest of working with apps that help me transverse a very broad range of products, but don't help me transverse the festival itself, as well as just capturing tasting notes in a 1, 2, 3 moment. And I really found the app to be very instrumental in even just helping me remember the onslaught of things that I tried. So next question that I'll answer my own question here up front as well, which is did I think it was big, or what did I think about the festival in general? I really thought that it was bigger than I thought it was going to be. Getting here again, this is my first time attending GABF itself. There are a couple of things that I'm thinking about in a point of reflection. It's a bit more of a regional beer festival. It's a little difficult for me to describe it as the Great American Beer Festival because it's very heavily laden with a lot of West Coast breweries, both within the areas surrounding Colorado as well as Nevada and the other states that are around here. Definitely a very heavy California West Coast influence. I really felt like a lot of the representation for breweries that are basically beyond the Midwest were paltry. There were some good key, cornerstone breweries that were here, but compared to a lot of the beer festivals that I've been back on the East Coast, I really thought there were a lot of folks that were missing. So a little difficult for me to describe it as a great American beer festival, but a really good beer festival nonetheless. A lot of great sponsorship, a lot of good money flowing, to make this thing happen, and certainly the size and scale of it, I'm really impressed with how well it went overall. So that swings us back around to talk about the beer. So second question I have for all of you: how many beers do you think we've had over the last 4 or 5 days? Any good guesses?
I only mostly took notes on the beers that I really liked, that I thought were pretty exceptional, and a few that I thought, I just really wanted to just sort of lambast, so there were a couple of those. It's hard to say. They're 1 ounce pours. I don't know, 80 pours. I lost count.
Wow.
I think that's the point. You lose count. And actually, in all fairness, some of those 1 ounce pours, maybe a half of that was going back into the bucket. So,
yeah, that's true. That happened quite a bit to me as well. Regina, what do you think? How many beers do you think you had? You tasted over these last few days?
It's very hard to say. I would probably guess 80 to 100, but like Mark said, I agree. I mean, you knew that there were so many out there, and if it was not outstanding, then you dump it, rinse, and go to the next one, because there's so many beers there when you have 3,000.
Yeah, and it's a time thing too. I mean, you're standing there, and it's like you don't have time to taste like all the beers that brewery is presenting there as well. And yeah, definitely some of the breweries that brought like 8+ beers. 2 at the most you were having in each of those booths. I mean, it's just, there's a timing and a physicality, to even getting through everything, even in multiple sessions. And, for those people that were attending just one session, I have no idea even what their game plan is. It's just crazy.
And you really do need to have a game plan, like the mobile app. You've got to have some kind of game plan when you walk in there, or you're going to be lost.
Yeah. Kevin the Brewer, how many beers do you think you've had over the last 4 or 5 days?
Well, I really don't know what you guys' problem is. I think I did them all, and then I was repeating them today and starting back over again. But no, absolutely not. There's no way. I think 10% would be a phenomenal accomplishment. I don't think I did that. Even working down through the Pro-Am table, because I think that's where some of the best beers were. I didn't even try all of those because I knew I just couldn't. So the ones that didn't sound particularly interesting, I skipped along and tried every other one, every third one, or whatever looked appropriate. So how many? I have no idea, but that's a lot of 1 ounce pours, I can tell you that.
Well, and that was one of the things I was thinking about kind of walking into this was I've been to wine festivals with, a certain presentation of the same number of wines, and I was thinking about how well am I going to do, at a beer festival with 3,000 plus beers, and did I say wine festival? A beer festival with 3,000 plus beers, and really wondering how many of those we get to sample. So, my swing at my own question is, I have thought about it, which is, I don't know, I'm probably somewhere in the neighborhood of around 400 to 500 beers, easily that I've had over the last 4 days. And those are not just the ones at the festival. That includes a lot of the after events and, our trips, around the Colorado area as well. So, I'm just hammered. And I just know how to hit the buttons here on our soundboard as well. So, it definitely has been a lot of beer, but still a lot of great beer to chat about. So, what's maybe the 1 or 2 top beers, for each of you that you're thinking about, kind of reflecting on? I know you'll have a lot of time to go back to your notes and certainly, go back and second guess yourself. I'll definitely do that. I know I will. But Reverend Mark, any beers that stick out with you, after the 2 or 3 days?
When we first arrived, I think that and we both had the same opinion, that it was the Damnation.
Yeah, the Russian River Damnation, which was not at the festival. Yeah.
But I would say of all the beers that I've had since we landed, that would be top 3 easily.
Good old gal Regina, what do you had several beers that you thought did really well and that you liked?
I did. Today I had a chocolate meltdown from a brewery I'd never heard of, Pennsylvania Brewing Company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that I give really high remarks to. But there's some really great breweries out there.
So how would you rate that beer on our suds rating?
I would have to give it a 4.5.
Oh, there's no halves in here, but we'll go for 4. How's that?
That works.
Really not make that sound. We'll take you to the Jim, good old boy Jim, remedial school of rating. No halves. Any beers that stick out for you, Kevin the Brewer?
Well, being a native Texan, and this whole thing with me and the pecan porter goes back to Texas, and so I had to go by where it all started with the 512 Brewery out of Austin, and the pecan porter, and they had a double pecan porter. And so 2 thumbs up to the double pecan porter. I mean, it's already good, and they made it doubly good.
So what's your sud rating on that beer?
Oh, well, that's 5.5 on the 5 scale.
You guys can go to the group couples therapy at the half rating show. Definitely had a lot of great beer, and I'm sure I'll talk about a lot more beer. On another segment, we'll probably wrap up just for our day 3. But there are some beers that are definitely making my top 3. The Damnation from Russian River definitely is still weighing heavy on me, even 3 or 4 days later. I can't begin to tell you how long the lines were at Russian River and New Glarus and the hall itself. I don't know, 100 people deep, easy revenue mark?
Yeah, I mean, we got there right at the very beginning at noon, and the line was already to the entrance, probably 150 or more people, and we said, we'll come back in a couple hours. Same thing. And by the time we could get in the line, of course,
the beer was gone.
Nothing to be in the line for. So.
Yeah, which that really sucked. And that was one of the things that I noticed definitely on this last session, that as we were walking around and even trying to taste, some of the medal winners, the beer wasn't even there at all, which I think that sucked. I mean, you couldn't even taste something that really did well, here at the show. Well, there's definitely one beer that's going to hit my top 3. We'll probably talk about it a lot more, but definitely something that caught my attention was Weyerbacher's 18th anniversary. I mean, just phenomenal beer. Oh my God. I can't begin to say enough really good things about this beer, and probably talk a whole lot more about it on our next episode, but very easy for me to say it's going to be a 5. We can swing back around to it. So I look forward to talking about that beer and several other beers that we had today. So any other beers you guys wanted to chat about or rate?
Well, one that I've had a couple of times in different settings. One was outside the GABF earlier this week, and then again, actually a couple of times, because I just kept going back to see what these guys have, is the Firestone Walker, and it was the Prevo Hoppy Pilsner. Mm-hmm.
Which is almost a contradiction in terms. I mean, I just usually don't think of Pilsners as having a hoppy,
Oh, they're very hoppy beers, and I think it was it pushed the style, but it was still, I think, just a delicious, well-made, pale, clean, and refreshing. With I guess they had a lot of Saaz. I didn't really read the hop schedule on it, but. Yeah, I was impressed, and I wasn't drinking a lot of Pilsners this week, so maybe that was it too.
Well, I think that's one of the things I found myself doing today was definitely going metal hunting, and I know you guys did a lot of that this afternoon, didn't you?
Yeah.
We sure
Absolutely.
did, and to some disappointment, as you mentioned, that a lot of the medal winners are just not there.
Yeah, they that just it did. It sucked that you couldn't taste something that metal.
And I'm not a commercial brewer, but as a brewer, I can kind of understand that you make something and you have no idea how it's going to turn out, and it turns out really well, and you entered into the competition, but you don't have much of it. Maybe you only got a barrel of it, and so. That could be the explanation. I want to try to give everybody that's trying as hard as they can a pass, but otherwise, it does suck.
And again, the brewers were not there. Behind especially at the one session that was this afternoon, not this evening, was a Brewers Association member only. I think that's right. Or American Homebrewer Association member. I'm not really quite sure, but even the brewers were not hanging around their own booths again to talk to other people about their own beers. Just the volunteer pourers, many times, and just even you'd ask a question, did any of these beers medal, and they're like, I don't know.
They're volunteers. They have no idea.
I have
Which,
no idea.
hats off to being a volunteer, but you'd rather talk to the people that know.
Yeah, always, and so kind of left to your own vice, many times deciding, what to pick. Definitely the number of categories, even within the event itself, I was pretty surprised. I mean, 78 different categories that they dish out here.
84.
I'm sorry?
84.
84. Wow. That's just amazing. And then to have, as much metal beer, available for people to try. I mean, that's it's kind of extraordinary that you would have that particular situation. And definitely, I was hearing a lot of brewers, grouse, about the competition itself, as the week kind of was grinding on. And so there's part of me looking at this as a giant beer competition, and part of me looking at this as a really big beer festival. And I don't know that those two things are completely aligned, with each other as well.
I don't think they are completely aligned, but I think they're inseparable. So it's just the nature of the beast, and neither one could stand on its own. They really do need to go together, but they do have some conflict, which is what you're touching on. Nevertheless, the overall experience is just fantastic, and the organization was great.
So did you guys get to any of the other things that were in any of the lecture events or any of those particular events? It was all beer tasting.
With 3,000 beers out there and sit in a lecture hall?
Do I want to sit and listen to a bunch of chumps sit and pontificate about their ability of brewing beer?
I think I've heard it before.
I know how to brew beer. Why do I need to listen to those chumps? How about the silent disco? Did you get it on with the DJ?
That was fun to watch.
It was fun to watch.
And the guy that dropped his glass probably got the biggest roar. Some of your listeners may not be familiar with that nuance.
Yeah, well, that's our lead-in sound effect for the show tomorrow is going to be, the whole thing about dropping your glass, either the plastic one or the real glass one. We definitely have a lot of pictures that you'll see up on our Facebook page, about several things, from the festival itself. The people were definitely quite interesting, and I enjoyed the stories, from a lot of the folks that we, kept on meeting, time and time again. Just the costumes, the story, it was pretty funny after a while.
Yeah, there were two guys that were following me around because I have on a Bosco shirt, and the guy's English bulldog is named Bosco, so he got a picture made with me. So
yeah, he thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. He followed us around probably 4 or 5 booths, just to snap that picture, which was pretty funny, all by itself today. Well, the army of volunteers that I really took quite notice of how many people were walking around with those volunteer T-shirts, and that was pretty amazing. That those folks would really give up their time just to pour beer. I mean, I don't know a lot of people would stand there for 4 hours and do that freely.
Yeah, having some other industry experience with trade shows and setting them up and trying to make them work properly, I thought this was extremely well organized, and they did have a lot of volunteers, and they seemed to be schooled on what they were doing and patient to do a good job and to direct you in the right direction, and it flowed very well. So hats off to the organization for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I enjoyed our brief discussion, kind of about, the festival itself and, a few beers that we all got to try. I'm sure we'll be talking about this for weeks on end. I've still got, probably good shows, in front of me and a lot of tasting notes to share with our audience. So I look forward to that. I guess the parting question I have for all of you, are you coming back next year?
We'll see. I'm primed for it. We'll, if I can get on the Pro-Am bandwagon again, that would be great. It's a little more problematic getting tickets if you're not coming in with a brewery, but I would do that as well.
How about you, Regina?
I would probably do a repeat in the future. Maybe not next year, but it's a little overwhelming. There's lots of good beers out there, and I enjoyed some of the other venues
outside of
the festival. Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, went to several of the local breweries here in town, as well as did the rare beer tasting, and I found that probably my favorite thing.
How about you, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to come back, and I hope it'll be next year as a Pro-Am entry and walk away with the big gold medal. But this is
With Regina IPA.
Yeah, with Regina IPA, that would be icing on the cake.
Boat beer extraordinaire.
Yeah, so
We need a category for that. I mean, we have a category, but there needs to be a category for that.
I think if there's room for 80, what'd you say?
84?
83 categories, there's one for boat beer. I think we should add that in. Well, I really had a great time this week as well. It's definitely, I would say, taxing on me physically. I enjoyed I think I agree with Regina. I think I enjoyed the events outside of the festival itself. Were very informative, the quality of the beers, as well as, I think the intimacy of having what I would consider just frankly, a conversation, with some of the breweries, that we went to. I probably enjoyed that a little bit more, than the festival itself. You can always get a hold of beer and taste it and go to beer festivals, but it's nice to have both that are here. So for somebody to invest, 2 or 3 days once, absolutely. I'd say yes, thumbs up, all the way. To do it back to back, every year, whew, I don't know about that. That'd be a tough one. So, well, I want to thank you all for chatting, about our experience this week. We've all had a great time.
Did have a great time. I loved it.
Fantastic.
Let's do it again soon.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me for this conversation, and I look forward to future conversations about beer or whatever life brings to all of us. That's for sure. Definitely the boat beer series.
Coming soon.
Thank you very much, Kevin the Brewer.
Thank you.
Good old gal Regina.
Thank you.
Reverend Mark.
Thank you.
And most of all, we're going to say that this episode is
in the can.
That's right. This episode is definitely in the can. I want to thank our listeners for joining us for this episode as well. If you've not checked out our Facebook, there's a lot of great information about this festival, as well as a lot of other great topics we have here on Sip, Suds, and Smokes. You can always reach us at sipsudsandsmokes@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. You can catch all of our tasting notes on there every single day at Sip, Suds, Smokes. Most of all, this is good old boy Mike, and I want to thank you, to ask you to keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.